They say crime doesn't pay. For these 49 individuals, it didn't even cover the basic cost of common sense. We're not just looking at failed heists, we're witnessing a masterclass in self-sabotage, where the biggest clue left at the crime scene was the criminal's own astonishing incompetence. This is a tribute to the outlaws who make police work look less like an investigation and more like a hidden camera prank show. 1. There are certain protocols for robbing a bank. Leaving behind evidence is generally frowned upon in the criminal underworld. But one genius in California decided to not just leave a clue, but to provide a full-service suspect package. He scribbled his threatening note on the back of his own pay stub. Let that sink in. His name, his employer, and his home address all neatly delivered to the teller. The police investigation must have been the shortest in history. It probably consisted of a single detective looking at the note, shrugging, and saying, "Well, guess I'll just drive over to his house and arrest him." It's less of a whodunit and more of a, "This guy did it, here's his address." 2. A wannabe cat burglar in Kentucky attempted a dramatic, through-the-ceiling entrance into a convenience store. He got the dramatic part right, but it was more of a comedy. He misjudged a ceiling tile and came crashing down in an aisle, surrounded by a cloud of dust and shame. Now, a smart criminal would flee. This guy? He stood up, brushed himself off, grabbed a soda, and tried to play it cool at the counter, offering a casual, "Crazy night, huh?" The cashier, completely unfazed by the man who just fell through his roof, simply gestured towards the gaping hole and deadpanned, "Yeah, you gonna pay for the ceiling damage too, or should I just take it out of your soda money?" 3. When you're a fugitive, blending in is key. This is a concept that was clearly lost on a man in Oregon whose escape plan involved climbing a tree while wearing a neon orange prison jumpsuit. He was less of a hidden outlaw and more of a giant, glowing Cheeto stuck in a branch. He perched there, convinced of his own stealth, a safety orange beacon of failure against the green leaves. His reign of terrible hiding came to an end not by a police drone, but by a squirrel. The furry agent of justice startled him, causing him to lose his grip and tumble directly into a thorny bush, where officers were already waiting, probably trying very hard not to laugh. 4. You know, some criminals are just too helpful. A man in Georgia decided to rob a bank, but he forgot to bring his own paper for the stick-up note. So he improvised. He reached into his pocket and wrote his demands on the first thing he could find, the back of his own prescription slip. It had his full name and address printed right on it. The teller took the note, read it, and with the professionalism of a saint, excused herself to the back room. She wasn't getting the money. She was calling the police and giving them a suspect who was so dumb, he basically mailed them an invitation to his own arrest. 5. Picking your target is arguably the most important part of a successful mugging. A thief in California saw a man at an ATM and thought he had an easy mark. He pulled out a weapon and demanded the cash. The victim, who happened to be a karate instructor, just calmly placed his wallet on the ground and asked, "Are you absolutely certain this is how you want your evening to go?" The robber insisted, and was promptly introduced to the pavement via a swift and very educational martial arts move. A nearby cop saw the whole thing, strolled over, and casually asked the instructor, "You got this, or do you need me to tag in?" 6. A man in Alabama attempted to hold up a liquor store with what he believed was a stroke of genius, a banana concealed in his jacket. He pointed the vaguely gun-shaped fruit at the cashier, demanding money. His plan for potassium-fueled terror hit a snag when, mid-threat, the banana snapped under pressure. A limp piece of it fell pathetically to the floor. The cashier, a true hero of retail, didn't even flinch. He picked up the broken piece of fruit, took a thoughtful bite, and asked, "Really? This is all you brought?" The robber, utterly defeated by his own grocery choice, turned and fled, leaving his dignity and the banana behind. 7. You'd think a pet store would be an easy target for a robbery, but one thief in Florida didn't account for the high-tech avian security system. As he was stuffing his bag with stolen goods, a parrot squawked at the top of its lungs, "Hey, I see you!" Panicked, the man got into a full-blown shouting match with the bird, trying to intimidate it into silence. He was so consumed by his feathered nemesis that he failed to notice the store employees calmly locking the front doors. By the time he won the argument with the parrot, he had lost his freedom, as the police were already walking in to cuff him. 8. A burglar in Texas thought he'd found the perfect sneaky entrance, a small doggy door. He successfully wriggled through, only to be met by the homeowner's pet, a Great Dane the size of a refrigerator. But instead of a mauling, the burglar got something far more humiliating. The giant dog, delighted to have a new friend, simply sat on him. The man was pinned, unable to move under 150 pounds of friendly, tail-wagging dog. He yelled for help for 15 minutes until the owners got home, surveyed the bizarre scene, and made the calmest 911 call ever. "Hi, yeah, our dog caught a burglar. No rush, he's not going anywhere." 9. In the annals of terrible disguises, this one deserves its own pathetic chapter. A thief in Georgia, in a stroke of anti-genius, decided his face would be best obscured by a plastic grocery bag. However, he overlooked a crucial step in the breathing to stay conscious process: air holes. Mid-heist, while trying to sound intimidating, he began to wobble. His brain, starved of oxygen, simply shut down. He collapsed right at the counter, a victim of his own suffocating stupidity. The cashier, witnessing this self-foiled robbery, didn't panic. He just calmly walked around the counter, found a roll of duct tape, and neatly packaged the unconscious criminal for the arriving officers. 10. Pro tip for aspiring fugitives. If you're going to attempt a dramatic action movie escape through the ceiling vents, first confirm that you are, in fact, in an action movie. A man in Texas fleeing from the law scrambled into the ductwork of a municipal building, likely imagining a thrilling crawl to freedom. Reality, however, has a different script. The flimsy metal sheet gave way under his weight, and he plummeted down, landing with a deafening crash right in the middle of a fully occupied police interrogation room. Imagine the scene. 2 detectives staring down a suspect when another one literally falls out of the sky. You couldn't write a more efficient arrest. 11. While some criminals execute heists with military precision, others operate with the strategic foresight of a hungry toddler. A burglar in Kentucky broke into a home and was immediately sidetracked by the kitchen. He meticulously crafted himself a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, then decided the living room couch looked like the perfect spot for a post-meal nap. The homeowner returned to find this stranger snoring peacefully, the half-eaten sandwich resting on his chest like a trophy. The subsequent 911 call must have been surreal, and the police probably debated whether to use handcuffs or just gently shake him awake first. 12. Any seasoned bank robber knows you need a sturdy bag for the loot. One amateur in Texas clearly missed this memo, showing up to a heist with a recently emptied movie theater popcorn bag. As the terrified teller loaded stacks of cash into it, the greasy, butter-saturated paper began to darken and weaken. The robber made it to the parking lot before the bag's structural integrity completely failed. The bottom ripped open, creating a whirlwind of cash and the faint smell of artificial butter. Witnesses just saw a man standing in a tornado of his own stolen money, a portrait of instant, pathetic failure. 13. A burglar in Ohio made a bold decision to exit a home via a rooftop skylight. He fancied himself an acrobat, taking a running leap towards an adjacent roof. But physics, being a cruel mistress, had other plans. He misjudged the distance, clipped the ledge, and was sent careening backward in a perfect, humiliating arc. He flew back through the very skylight he had just exited, landing with an enormous splash in the homeowner's bathtub. Soaked, defeated, and trapped by the slippery porcelain walls, he was still contemplating his life choices when the police arrived to fish him out. 14. There's confidence, and then there's a level of audacity that borders on a cry for help. A woman in Illinois was in the process of shoplifting from a large department store. But on her way out, stolen merchandise in tow, she was struck by a thought. You know, this seems like a nice place to work. She proceeded to the customer service desk and asked for a job application, which she filled out using her real name, address, and contact information. The store manager graciously accepted her application, waited for her to leave, and then handed the police a neatly filled-out confession sheet. 15. Burglars usually break in expecting to find valuables. One man in North Carolina broke into an elderly woman's house and found only pure, undiluted terror. The moment his eyes adjusted to the dim light, he saw them. Hundreds of porcelain clown dolls. They were on every shelf, every table, in every corner, their painted smiles and dead glass eyes staring into his soul. Overwhelmed by the silent, judging audience of ceramic horrors, he turned and fled the house without stealing a thing. He later told police the eyes followed him, a detail so chilling that the responding officers reportedly refused to go inside the house themselves. 16. In the world of car theft, timing is critical. A criminal in Colorado demonstrated exceptionally poor timing by trying to steal a car while it was literally being refueled. He jumped in, slammed the car into drive, and hit the gas. Instead of a speedy getaway, he ripped the entire gas pump hose and nozzle from the station's housing, unleashing a geyser of gasoline. The quick-thinking attendant hit the emergency shutoff, but the damage was done. The thief, now soaked in flammable liquid from the waist down, was easily apprehended, with officers gently reminding him of the strict no-smoking policy in the back of a patrol car. 17. Here's a lesson in disguises. They should probably cover your most distinguishing features. A man in Michigan donned a ski mask to rob a gas station, feeling confident in his anonymity. He had, however, completely forgotten about the enormous, unmistakable tattoo on his neck that spelled out his own last name in bold lettering. The clerk took one look, recognized the name, and casually said, "Hey Steve, what's up?" The robber, so flustered at being greeted by name mid-crime, grabbed a few bills and ran. He was, unsurprisingly, arrested at his home shortly after. 18. When it comes to smuggling stolen goods, subtlety is your friend. This concept was utterly foreign to a man in Florida who attempted to shoplift 50 frozen lobsters by stuffing them down his pants. He then tried to waddle casually towards the exit, hoping no one would notice his oddly rigid and lumpy legs. His plan reached its spectacular conclusion when one of the thawing crustaceans twitched. The man shrieked in a high-pitched panic, ripped his pants off right there in the entryway, and fled into the parking lot, leaving behind a bewildered staff, a pile of seafood, and a story for the ages. 19. The goal of a disguise is to obscure one's identity. A man in Florida attempted this by placing a single, completely transparent plastic produce bag over his head before robbing a convenience store. He stood before the cashier, his entire face perfectly visible through the thin plastic, which was already starting to fog up from his breathing. The cashier, fighting a losing battle against laughter, simply handed over the cash. The police were able to get a crystal-clear description of the suspect, as his disguise did nothing but add a layer of pathetic condensation to his face. 20. Some criminals are masters of evasion, executing flawless getaways. And then there's the guy in Washington who snatched a smartphone and took off running with the speed of an Olympian. His directional sense, however, was less than gold medal worthy. In his panicked sprint, he burst through a set of double doors and skidded to a halt in the main lobby of a police station. He just stood there, phone in hand, surrounded by a sea of blue uniforms, having successfully delivered himself directly into custody. It was the criminal equivalent of a fish jumping directly into the boat. 21. In a move that defies all logic, a man in Kentucky decided he could outsmart a store's security system by walking in backward. His theory was that the cameras wouldn't be able to identify him if they couldn't see his face on the way in. It was a brilliant plan, except for the part where cameras record everything, including his entire body and the distinct set of muddy footprints he left leading from the door, across the parking lot, and directly up the driveway to his own front door. The police didn't need to be detectives. They just needed to be able to follow a very obvious trail. 22. Some criminals lack foresight. Others seem to lack a basic grasp of the entire concept of crime. Take two men in California who felt they were the victims of a terrible injustice. They'd handed over cash for a bag of illegal drugs, but the dealer had cheated them, selling them a bag of common kitchen spices instead. Furious at this breach of criminal etiquette, they did the only logical thing they could think of. They called 911 to report the fraudulent drug deal. They actually expected the police to help them. Officers arrived, listened to the entire absurd story, and then arrested the two victims for attempting to buy drugs. A true lesson in customer service. 23. When you think getaway vehicle, you probably picture something fast and powerful. A man in Florida, however, thought golf cart. After a robbery, he made his grand escape by hijacking the slowest, least intimidating vehicle on the planet. The police didn't even bother running. They just followed him at a brisk walking pace. When they finally caught up to him on the 9th fairway, he defiantly yelled, "You can't arrest me, this is private property." The officers, who were probably enjoying the light cardio, calmly explained that's not how jurisdiction works. 24. Committing a crime is stressful work and sometimes you just need a little nap. A man in Nevada was trying to steal a car but found himself completely stumped by the locked doors. After several minutes of yanking on the handle in frustration, he gave up, found an unlocked back door, and decided to just crawl inside and sleep it off. The one tiny detail he missed? The car was a marked police cruiser. The officers returned from their coffee break to find the would-be thief snoring soundly in their back seat, already in a makeshift holding cell. 25. If you're going to rob a supermarket, it pays to know the floor plan. A thief in Texas stormed in, successfully emptied the cash register, and then made a sprint for what he thought was the exit. Instead, he found himself in a windowless stockroom. He spent a full 30 seconds frantically spinning in circles like a confused video game character, completely unable to find a way out. The store manager calmly watched his panic for a moment before pointing to the emergency exit, right as two police officers were walking through it. 26. This story is a masterclass in not thinking things through. A not-so-bright thief broke into a convenience store, and his big score was a stack of lottery tickets. The next morning, flush with his winnings, he returned to the very same store to cash them in. The clerk, who had just spent the previous night giving a statement to the police about the stolen tickets, recognized them immediately. He calmly scanned the winning ticket, looked up with a smile, and said, "Congratulations! You've just won an all-expenses-paid trip to the county jail." 27. A burglar in California thought he was a genius, deciding to bypass alarms by making a classic Santa Claus entrance down the chimney. What he failed to consider is that chimneys are designed for smoke, not for out-of-shape criminals. He got hopelessly wedged inside, unable to move up or down. After a long, sooty night of regretting every decision that led him to this moment, the homeowners woke to the sound of faint, desperate cries coming from their fireplace. The fire department was called, and they had to dismantle part of the chimney to extract the world's most pathetic burglar. 28. Hiding from the police in a dumpster might seem like a decent short-term solution, but it has a very firm and very dangerous deadline. Trash day. A fugitive in Ohio learned this lesson in the most terrifying way possible. Huddled amongst the garbage, his sanctuary was abruptly lifted into the air and emptied into a garbage truck. The deafening roar of the hydraulic compactor starting up was his cue to scream for his life. Luckily, the driver heard his panicked cries and hit the emergency stop, saving him from being compacted, but delivering him directly to the waiting police. 29. Getaway plans should always include a successful exit. A man in Florida robbed a convenience store, grabbed the cash, and made a confident dash for the front door. He was met not with freedom, but with an unyielding sheet of glass. The automatic doors were out of order, requiring a manual push. This concept was too complex for our panicked thief, who just repeatedly slammed his body into the glass like a confused moth. The cashier simply picked up the phone and called 911 while watching the free and very stupid entertainment. 30. A clean getaway is key. This guy's getaway was memorable for all the wrong reasons. After robbing a small-town bank, He sprinted out with a bag of cash, feeling like a genius. What he didn't realize was that the teller had slipped a dye pack in with the money. As he ran down Main Street, the pack exploded, covering him and all the stolen cash in a cloud of bright red smoke and indelible ink. He stopped, looked at his now worthless, stained money and his own red hands, just as the town's only police officer slowly pulled up beside him and asked, "Rough day at the paint factory?" 31. There's a fine line between a big score and a frozen disaster. A man in Ohio broke into a bakery overnight, hoping to find the cash box. He found no money, but he did manage to accidentally lock himself inside the walk-in freezer. As the temperature dropped, so did his spirits. He briefly called 911 for help, then hung up, remembering he was the one breaking the law. He tried to tough it out, but by the time the baker arrived in the morning, he was found huddled in a corner, covered in frost, and ready to confess to anything in exchange for a warm blanket. 32. A burglar in Washington was methodically robbing a house, gathering up all the expensive electronics. He found a nice suitcase in the closet and began carefully packing his stolen goods into it. He was just zipping it up when the homeowner walked in, looked at the burglar, looked at the suitcase, and said, "Hey man, you know that's my luggage, right?" The thief froze, looked down at the suitcase he was stealing being used to steal other items, and could only mutter, "Oh, well, this is awkward," just before being held at bay with a floor lamp. 33. Modern technology can be a criminal's worst enemy, especially when that criminal is an idiot. Two burglars in Oklahoma were hiding in the bushes, whispering about their plans, when one of them accidentally butt-dialed 911. The dispatcher was treated to a live, crystal-clear audio feed of their entire criminal conspiracy, including their names and their exact location. The responding officers didn't need to search. They just followed the sound of their own dispatch call coming from the suspect's pocket. It was the easiest manhunt in the department's history. 34. The key to successful shoplifting is discretion. A man in Florida decided to take a different approach, attempting to steal a 6-foot-tall artificial Christmas tree by just walking out of the store with it. In June, when security stopped him, dragging the massive festive decoration behind him, he feigned complete surprise. He insisted, with a straight face, that he thought Christmas trees were free. The security guard just stared at him for a beat before pointing out the obvious flaw in his seasonal defense. 35. In a move of baffling ambition, a man in Arizona attempted to rob a department store by posing as a mannequin. He climbed into a display window before opening hours and stood perfectly still for hours, waiting for the store to close. His commitment was impressive, but his understanding of human physiology was not. As the night security guard did his rounds, he noticed one of the mannequins was sweating profusely. He tapped on the glass, and the statue flinched, then bolted in a blind panic. His escape ended abruptly when he ran headfirst into the automatic doors, which hadn't opened in time. He bounced off the glass, stumbled backward directly into a rack of expensive handbags, and was hopelessly entangled in purse straps when the security guard calmly walked over and detained him. 36. A man in New York decided to steal an entire ATM by employing the age-old disguise of a guy who looks like he's supposed to be here. He donned a high-visibility vest, brought a dolly, and confidently started wheeling the cash machine towards the exit. It was a surprisingly effective strategy, drawing almost no attention. He was just feet from the door when a real employee stopped him and asked to see his work order. The thief, in a moment of panic, blurted out, I left it in the truck." The employee was not convinced, and security quickly arrived to escort him to a much less profitable destination. 37. A burglar in Texas broke into a house, and his eyes lit up when he saw a massive, wall-mounted flat-screen TV. He unhooked it, ready to make off with his prize, only to discover it was too wide to fit through any of the doors. He tried turning it sideways, tilting it, even attempting to remove the door frame, all to no avail. Exhausted and defeated, he gave up, mounted the TV back on the wall, and decided to watch a movie. The homeowners returned to find him chilling on their couch, and his excuse was, "I was just testing the picture quality." They let the police test the quality of their handcuffs instead. 38. Some criminals are their own worst enemies. A guy in Ohio robbed a corner store and, flush with stolen cash, decided to celebrate his success immediately. He walked into the bar right next door and, feeling generous, started buying rounds of drinks for everyone inside. The bartender, suspicious of this sudden big spender, casually asked where he got all the cash. The robber, full of liquid courage, proudly announced, "I just knocked over that place next door." The bartender smiled, poured him another free drink, and quietly called 911. 39. Some criminals focus on execution. Others don't even think past step 1. A man in Florida tried robbing a convenience store with a toy gun, but halfway through his demands, a customer grabbed it and shouted, "Dude, this is from Walmart. It still has the price tag." The thief panicked, yelled, "It's the thought that counts," and turned to run. In his haste, he tripped over his own feet, went flying, and slid headfirst into a large display of canned beans. The resulting crash and avalanche of cans was so loud it effectively stunned him until the police arrived. 40. High-pressure situations bring out the best in some people and the absolute dumbest in others. A man in Tennessee attempted to rob a grocery store, but when he got to the counter, the cashier, on autopilot, asked the standard question, "Will that be debit or credit?" The robber, completely thrown off script, panicked. He pulled out a stolen credit card and tried to swipe it. The machine declined. He tried again, declined again. As he stood there, confused, the cashier just smirked and said, "Want me to hold this for you while you try another card?" The police arrived before he could figure out his next move. 41. An aspiring criminal in California decided to skip the subtlety and go straight for brute force. His plan? Steal an entire ATM by driving his pickup truck through the front wall of the bank and yanking it out. The plan had one major flaw. ATMs are bolted to the concrete foundation with several inches of steel. Instead of pulling the machine out, he just ripped the entire front bumper off his own truck. His license plate, still neatly attached to the bumper, was left behind at the crime scene. The police didn't have to look far. They just followed the trail of leaking coolant right to his driveway. 42. When you're on the run from the police, a porta potty might seem like a decent hiding spot. It is not. A fugitive in Arizona learned this when he dove into one to escape a foot chase. Unfortunately for him, it had just been serviced and was filled with that bright blue, chemically potent disinfectant. The officers, hearing him sloshing around inside, simply latched the door from the outside, tipped the entire unit onto its side, and waited. His mugshot was legendary, as his entire head and torso were dyed a vibrant, shameful shade of blue. 43. Criminals are notoriously slow to adapt to new technology. A car thief in Texas thought he'd scored big when he managed to break into and drive off with a brand new Tesla. He made it about 5 miles before the car's owner, watching the theft happen on his phone app, remotely locked the doors, disabled the accelerator, and put the car in park. The thief was trapped inside a very expensive, very stationary brick. When the police arrived, he was pretending to be asleep in the driver's seat, a tactic that failed to convince anyone. 44. Pro tip for burglars. Stay off social media while you're on the job. A man in Pennsylvania broke into a house, grabbed a few valuables, and then made a fatal error. He noticed the victim's computer was on and decided it was a great time to log into his own Facebook account. He got so engrossed in scrolling through his newsfeed that he completely forgot to log out before leaving. The homeowner returned, found the burglar's profile page still open, and handed the police the easiest lead of their careers. It's the digital equivalent of leaving your wallet at the scene. 45. Some burglars leave behind fingerprints or DNA. This one left behind an olfactory assault. A man in Louisiana broke into a home and hid in a closet when he heard the homeowner return unexpectedly. His critical mistake was the large plate of chili beans he had eaten for dinner an hour earlier. Trapped in the small, unventilated space, nature took its course. The homeowner, suddenly smelling an odor so foul he thought there was a major gas leak, immediately called 911. The fire department arrived, and a search led them to the closet, where they found a very embarrassed burglar trying to become one with the coats. 46. Grand theft auto is a lot harder in real life, especially if you can't drive a stick shift. A thief in Florida successfully broke into a sporty-looking car in a parking lot, jumped in, and then realized his nemesis: a manual transmission. The security cameras captured several minutes of him kangaroo-hopping the car forward a few feet at a time, stalling repeatedly. Finally, giving up in a fit of rage, he abandoned the car in the middle of the parking aisle and fled on foot, leaving behind a perfect video record of his incompetence. 47. Most robbers have a getaway car. This genius in Alabama had a getaway lawnmower. After holding up a small rural store, he made his escape on a riding mower he'd hot-wired, chugging away from the scene at a blistering top speed of 5 miles per hour. A police officer on foot was able to easily catch up to him, casually jogging alongside the mower for a bit before asking, "So you gonna pull over, or are we doing this for the whole 5 miles? 48. A burglar in Nevada decided that a successful break-in deserved a little celebration. After ransacking the house for valuables, he felt he'd earned some relaxation time. He proceeded to run a hot bubble bath, pour himself a glass of the homeowner's finest wine, and slip into a luxurious silk robe from the closet. He got so comfortable that he actually fell asleep in the tub. The homeowner returned to this bizarre scene, sighed, and told the snoozing criminal, "You better not have used all the hot water before calling the police." 49. A man in Nevada attempted a jewelry store robbery with more confidence than brain cells. He ran in, grabbed an entire glass display case full of rings, and tried to sprint out. He had failed to notice that the large front window he was aiming for was, in fact, bulletproof glass and not an exit. He slammed into it with full force, sending him reeling backward and shattering the case he was holding, scattering diamonds all over the floor. By the time the police arrived, the store's employees were already on their hands and knees, calmly collecting the evidence for them. So that's 49 certified moments of criminal genius. But I know for a fact this list is incomplete. Every town has a legend about a local idiot who tried something so stupid, it became a cautionary tale. Now it's your turn. I want you to expose them. Describe the absolute dumbest criminal fail you've ever heard of in the comments below. Let's see whose town has the champion. While you're typing, hit like for this festival of failure, and subscribe so you never miss our next collection of morons.